Blog Talk Radio.
Okay, so this is an interesting way to start the morning. And first, somehow I couldn't get through. But here we are, we're through. I guess this has to do with Schadenfreude, which is what I'm going to talk about today. So this is Venus Unplugged. Let me see, we're about 4 minutes off schedule. But here we are. So Venus Unplugged, your virtual heartbreak hotel. This is your host, Llorraine Neithardt. And this Venus Unplugged is about all things that have to do with Venus, the good, the bad, the truth, the ugly, the transformational. And the last few weeks we have been talking about Cinderella and her sisters and the subject of envy, the very, very unpleasant subject of envy, but necessary. More now than ever, because not only are we going to have to grow up and look at what we're seeing and be able to recognize it without collapsing or feeding it, this thing called envy, or this thing called Schadenfreude. Schadenfreude is kind of like a cousin of envy. Schadenfreude is when somebody delights at someone else's suffering. So we're going to see this globally. Okay, we're going to see this politically, and we're certainly going to see it in relationships, and we can also see it kind of in, a very simple form of Schadenfreude is when somebody trips and we laugh. I mean, it's like a human instinct. We just laugh at another's suffering. Now, when it's kind of comes from a malice, well, that's a whole different story. So we all have this capacity for envy. And once again, we can have envy towards someone. We can be receiver of the envy, okay? And we need to also be aware sometimes of self-envy. One part of us can be envious of the other side and doesn't let us grow. So the Cinderella teachings are just about that very subject matter. You see, how do we understand? We know envy when we feel it. Right, but we don't understand the plight. So the difference between Cinderella and the envious sisters is Cinderella's response to goodness. She can relate to the goodness. Although she's suffering and she feels empty of the suffering and she's sitting and she's doing everything she can to create the good, she is not directly connected to the good, but she can still feel her connection to the good. She remembers love. She remembers goodness. So very often, and when we're being victimized, when we're being envied, we think of something good. We think of our connection to the divine. We think of a beloved animal. We think of times when we were loved, and we hold on to that in the dark night of the soul when we're under these envious attacks. The evil eye, Schadenfreude. Or, some people just, that's what black magic is about, making others suffer. But at the center of it is this envy complex, all right? But the sisters, those poor darlings, okay, they don't have any connection to anything. The father, the mother's nuts. She uses them for her status, but she doesn't relate to the sisters. So they really, they're clueless as to what the good is. So you need to remember that that's the nature of envy. although Cinderella weeps in her sorrow, she wishes for the good because she knows the good can be there. Now, the sisters refuse to experience their emptiness, which very often happens with people. I don't want to feel that. But it's like if we suffer consciously, not forever, just for that experience, if we suffer our disconnect from the good, okay, which is truly, horrible. It's horrible. When we lose our faith, oh goodness, that's a tough one, all right, because that's really darkness. But the sisters don't even have any faith, okay? They just see Cinderella. That's that invisible force she has for connecting to the good. So the sisters refuse to experience their emptiness, and instead they hurl their accusations and blame out to Cinderella. It's her fault that they feel awful. They deny their own suffering, and to the extent that they acknowledge its existence at all, turn it into someone else's malevolent doing. If you weren't alive, I'd feel better. Wow. I know. When you hear something like that, it goes in very, very deeply because we can't even comprehend it. We cannot comprehend. See, the sisters flee their own being. Their hunger for the goodness, for connectedness, for love, has never been appeased because it's never fully admitted. Fury replaces the suffering of the lack within themselves. Good, which is being, is responsible for their bad, which is beingness. So that's the fundamental difference, okay? So the spiritual plight in this story, okay, and in our lives, all right? Now, the sisters disown their being. They cover their hunger by false feelings of getting Cinderella to run here and run there and for different foods and dresses and services, and they pretend they are not hungry, not empty and miserable, insisting on their superiority. They dread admitting desire for the good and dependence upon it, and out of that dread springs their pseudo-doing and the persecution of good. They take offense at it, deny its reality, and hide from its presence. They certainly will never be given anything. So our denial of the good quickly leads to the hatred of the good. So this happens with anyone, all right, when we can't see that there is a potential goodness, then we may have to wait for that feeling because we have to, in a sense, be our own Cinderella. We have to suffer in the ashes, look around and go like, nope, wishes aren't coming true, don't know where the love is, Prince has gone to lunch, shoes are at the shoemaker, I'm suffering. But if we could secretly imagine a fire within our heart, and that is the fire that is burning away the suffering so that we are ready to accept the good, because we're in a moral dilemma and battle. Now, for people who have a strong complex of envy, their plight is equally unbearable. Although your job is not to have compassion for them if they're envying you. You got to stick on your side of the fence, okay? You have to understand, okay, something is happening in my life where this person or this situation or this government or whatever is trying to take away my goodness. I mean, this week in particular, this month in particular, we're really all going to be looking at a lot of unconscious envy, okay? Or another word called Schadenfreude. Schadenfreude is joy at the suffering of another. So there are a lot of people who are going to be having Schadenfreude towards the United States right now, right? We should suffer. We're too rich, we're too arrogant, and we do a lot of dumb things, okay? But this is part of what we fear. So in everything that's going on in the world right now, claim your good. And what do I mean by that? By claiming the good doesn't mean like, oh, everything's going to be good, meanwhile, your house is on fire, and not that way. But that essentially, when this time has passed, and it will, you will have a connection to the good. There's going to be tremendous inconveniences for most people and true tragedies for others. Now, if people are envious, they're not going to care about the poor. They're going to have Schadenfreude towards them. They're going to have they should just know better. Because of the envier's own suffering, they project that on to people less than, which is why it's so irrational. Why would you wish further suffering? Why would you put further suffering on already suffering people? At the heart of it is Cinderella's and the ashes and the evil sisters. So this concept, I know how difficult this is, but the more we can just slowly approach this, feel the fear of it, feel if it's coming up in you, feel if it's coming at you, because this is this hidden toxicity, and we're going to have 17 years of toxicity that we're all clearing up on all sorts of levels, on a psycho-spiritual level, physical, emotional, spiritual, the world. So this is a tipping point. And if we look at it, what is being demanded in these moral tales within ourselves in order to attain love, in order to be love? We may not be able to get the other person to love us. Cinderella can't get her sisters to play nice, okay? But she can stay connected to the good. So this is a big, 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 big now. Do not disconnect from your potential for the good. It may not be in your life right now at this moment, but it is there. Hold on to it. Yes, there will be situations, lots of them, where people will come up and terrify or frighten or just tell you there is no such thing and you're being idealistic. That's okay. Let them walk by. Remember Psyche and her sisters? When they saw how much she had the beloved, although invisible, and the treasures that she had, they went berserk. And they plotted to separate Psyche from her beloved Eros. So we need to be smarter than that, wiser than that. That's what Venus Unplugged is about. It's not about sweetness and light. It's not about blissniness. It's about really being able to see the heart of darkness, wisdom, transformation, and how to move through these life journeys with dignity. And although we may have to suffer something, we suffer because we don't understand the level of, that's what suffering is about. Suffering isn't because there's a sadistic being ruling the universe. Suffering is about transformation. We suffer because we don't know the answer. We suffer because it's new to us. We suffer because of our resistance. We suffer because suffering is growth. That's what to the depth of the suffering is to the depth of the growth. It's really hitting the mother lode, so to speak. It's just like when we get angry, okay, and we really lose connection. That always has to do with, wherever we will, and for those who are into astrology, forever where our Mars was wounded, but wherever there's a deep hurt that never got related to or worked on, or a person will just trip over that. And man, there is like 2 tons of emotion connected to that feeling value. And we lose it. And then we come out of it and we think, what was that about? Or we trip over something innocently with another person. We have no idea that that's their wound. Bam. That's what a lot of lovers' fights are about. But then we're so inundated and we don't even know what that wound is about, but it's just, you said this, how could you say this? But we don't talk about what the feeling was, what the wound was. But every time something like that happens, it's an opportunity to go in and relate to that wound yourself and heal it yourself. There's no one else's job to heal you but you. Now, we may have experiences. Now, once again, if someone says, oh, God, I envy you for being able to dance, that person means no harm. No harm will ever come to that. It is the hidden. You see, it's Cinderella just keeps on doing good, which is the most annoying thing you can do to somebody who envies you. It's like, they're so good. What are they so good about, okay? So that's why, the Cinderella, their sisters, their denial that they have a right to the goodness, they have the right, and their complications, all right? So they're just going to project it. So once again, Cinderella is like a suffering servant. She is the scapegoat. She is the feminine Christ in this fairy tale figure. But Cinderella, what she does have, is immense dignity that cannot be dismissed. So when people can suffer or know that they're under oppression, but they have dignity, and they will overcome. All right? That's what that's about. So what can we do when we're facing envy or the Schadenfreude? Again, the Schadenfreude is delight in someone's suffering. Now, if you trip and somebody laughs, that's just the kind of the instinct of Schadenfreude. It's not really a terrible thing, but it's the root. Okay. Now, there's even in testing there's brain scans that will actually show that the brain center, the pleasure center, okay, when someone is being tested and they're in a state of envy, that when they see, rather than their pleasure center being triggered off when they see the good in another, it actually turns to pain, which I think is very interesting. Okay. So it's physical. People used to think it was just, just a way with emotion, but it's not. It's fundamental. It's down deep in us. So when there's strong feelings in this brain scanning, so when there's strong feelings of envy, it activates the physical pain nodes in the dorsal anterior cortex, which is the brain reward centers, and they get activated. Now that's amazing to me. So this is, myth and fairy tale are moral teachings, and they know. So what can you do in the face of envy? There's really no formulas. The one that I see works the best is being able to stand in your own, having deep and profound gratitude for what you do have and what is connected. And eventually it will pass. We don't serve the evil. We don't serve the envier. We just look to the good. We can say a prayer. We can dance a jig. We can remember times when goodness was in your life. We can read a story. We can write a story. So remember, being envied is to experience someone wanting to tear away part of yourself. And if they fail to do that, to spoil it utterly. So that's powerful stuff. And I know it's terrifying. It's terrifying to be the victim of envy is terrifying. And to have the envy is equally because of the anguish. So this is, as I said, it's going to kick up big time. We have to hold on to goodness, to the creative, to the productive. Now, yes, in truth, our world is going through big changes. So perhaps we're going to have to sacrifice. Do not sacrifice your connection to the good by listening to fear. Fear is another oracle of envy. So be aware of that one. All right, people will give you all this fearful shit, and you'll walk away terrified. What's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to you is everybody's going to grow up. Okay? Everybody is going to mature, to be able to look at things in a different way, to be able to recognize where we need to kind of edit and where we need to stay strong and whole. Because we have that power. That's what's being tested now. Not to fall. I mean, we even see it in the politics. You know, just one politician envying another and not wanting the other to have a good legacy or not wanting the other one to have. That's what's underneath all of this. That's what we're looking at. That's what's so annoying. That is a fundamental wound in these people's hearts and being. They don't want something good to happen because they don't see the good. That doesn't mean that it's not good. So that's part of what's going on here is begin to recognize that your connection to your talents, to your ability, no matter how small or how great, do not take them away from you. Do not let another be more cat than dog. Just turn around and walk away. When a cat sees you've lost your marbles and you're going to act out, you want it to act in some other way than its own nature, that cat is gone. And this is what we all need to learn now, because we're all going to be facing this in one form or another, and we have faced it many, many times. Being able to humbly know, yes, that is true. I have that gift. And one of the worst things that we can do by feeding envy is denying our fate, denying our gifts, denying our possibilities. Now we have to work it. It may just be just a breath of a gift, but it's there. It starts with the desire. Just quietly go about your business, developing it, because that's what you love. And don't share it so quickly. And definitely don't share it with people who are envious. They'll piss all over that and you'll feel miserable. And that's what happens. Now there's a little thing, it's called envy, rage, spoil. This is something my Jungian teacher, mentor, taught me. And so what happens is if we wake up in a really bad mood and attacking, ask yourself, where did I get hit with envy in the last 24 hours? Your mind will immediately go to the situation that provoked the envy. Because we wake up in that vicious attacking because our good was attacked. And we may have allowed it because we didn't even recognize what it was, all right? See, in the many other cultures are much more sophisticated about this evil eye business than we are. We're way too intellectual, and we've got to get down and understand on a feeling level. So we wake up in a bad mood and just think, okay, did I get hit with envy in the last 24 hours? If you did, your mind will immediately go there, like, holy moly. And it could be somebody just looked at you, or it could be a passing, okay? So once you can see, oh my God, I really, I got the envy flu over here. I was infected. Because we wake up, it's envy, rage, spoil. We get hit with envy. We wake up with this rage, this attacking voice. It's just going after you, okay? And then we will do something that day to spoil it for ourselves. Now, if we catch it, like, whoa, that was a good idea that I gave away to some narcissist, all right, who just said, oh, no, that's not any good, okay, and they spoil it, and you got tricked. So the way to remedy it is consciousness, to look at it. It's just like, wow, look at that. I'm living in a fairy tale. I had a Cinderella moment. Look at this, okay? And for those who are filled with envy, your task is to slowly, painfully learn to connect that the good is there for you too, and you can have it. Because the belief is you can have it, but you can. So next week I think we're going to conclude, and we're going to work with some teachings on how to protect from this. But, of course, the greatest protection is wisdom. The greatest protection is recognizing it. The greatest protection is naming it, but not being terrified. Now, the Queen's told me I've got to bounce. You can't hear it, but she tells me when the radio show is about to end, all right? So we're working on this, and it comes at an amazing time to be conscious of this, not terrified, conscious. Knowledge and wisdom is power, all right? So have a blessed week. We're all looking at something one way or another. If it's not the world, it's our own inner world. And we're all having some Cinderella moments. So let's clear that up because we're going to the ball. Bye-bye.
Napa know-how.
A Napa guy knows more isn't always better, unless we're talking about full-size vans. These beasts do more than get you from A to B. They have so much space a man can live in it. With shag carpeting, waterbed, and a sweet lava lamp, these mobile abodes have all the comforts of home. With quality parts and plenty of Napa know-how, you can keep the original tiny house running longer, stronger. That's Napa know-how.
Napa know-how.
Stronger. That's Napa know-how.
Napa know-how.
Stronger. That's